I'm insanely infuriated with Disney Star Wars. This is my Ahsoka Episode 3 review, and while everyone seems to like it, I disagree and I think this episode depicts some of the worst things that can happen in Star Wars. First, let me talk about the very little that I liked just to get it out of the way. First, I liked how everything was filmed by Dave. The ships and the Purrgil looked huge and real. He did a fantastic job of not only depicting the enormous size of the Purrgil, but also the fear that the audience feels alongside our characters because of the creature's size. I, contrary to most of the internet, like the training sequence with Sabine. The fact that there are a lot of people in the community that thought her training sequence was too long blows my mind. People rightfully hate Rey because her training sequences were short and we saw no growth because of how lackluster the scenes were. So when Dave spends a solid amount of time showing Sabine slowly improving and using the Force to understand her surroundings, it shocks me that people think this scene was too long. She was sort of denying that she could use her senses via the Force to block Ahsoka, but she eventually got better at it. Not only that, at the end, Ahsoka tripped her and put her on the ground, clearly showing who's boss. Unlike the sequels, as after Rey and Luke's little duel, she had him defenseless on the ground. No wonder why Lucasfilm is confused on what fans want. In my opinion, if your writer wants to write a pretty lengthy scene that shows how the character struggles but improves, I'm all for it. And I think that's something Dave did a wonderful job at in this episode. Now, that's the only big things I enjoyed about this episode, the training sequence and the Purrgil, just because of how they were filmed. I also want to mention that I liked the first two episodes and I'm hopeful for this show. So hopefully that means my opinion can't be discredited by someone saying I'm just a hater when I've clearly shown on my channel that I liked the first two episodes. Anyways, let's discuss how Star Wars might be doomed, and it will be tough for Dave to save it. The first problem is an overarching problem that has happened in recent projects. A TLDR of this problem would be that every writer has to write the New Republic senators to be stupid. I'm referring to when Hera was in a hologram meeting with Mon Mothma and the senators. Now, of course, we'll just ignore the fact that Mon Mothma hasn't aged in 25 years. Anyways, here's my core problem that completely takes me out of the show. Hera clearly presents how Thrawn is a threat, and Thrawn is out there because Morgan Elsbeth is looking for him. She explains that he's a mastermind and the galaxy is doomed because he will come back and defeat the New Republic easily. Therefore, the New Republic needs to send massive support. Now, this Council of Senators, who have been around since the Republic, literally tell Hera that we're not going to help because we don't see Thrawn's ship flying around, therefore he doesn't exist, and there's no concern. The fact that these senators believe that if your enemy is hidden, they don't exist, is crazy. They all witness Palpatine's corruption come from the shadows and take over the government, and they still think because Thrawn is hiding and preparing that he's no threat. They're like, if the citizens don't see a threat, then we don't care. What type of military doesn't care about its enemies? Now, you might say, I'm going too far with that statement, but I'm not. First, they don't care about Thrawn because he's not right in front of them. Second of all their threats, the biggest threat is obviously Moff Gideon. And he was running shadow councils and operating a military, and the New Republic didn't even care. In Mando Season 3, and I don't mean to connect with Mando, but it's the same problem, the stupid New Republic office guy tells Carson Teva, sorry, we can't help you fight these Imperials and pirates because we just don't have any ships to spare. Are you serious? You have no ships to spare? Quick question, what is the Republic fleet and military even doing? They won't even help against the Imperial remnants, which seems to be their biggest and clear enemy, and they won't help against Thrawn. And most importantly, they don't give two shits that Kylo Ren is literally building another Death Star. They actually knew about the First Order, and they thought the First Order was not a threat. I can't find a better and more sophisticated word to describe these New Republic officers other than stupid. I mean, their entire fleet was destroyed when Hux blew up the planets, because their whole fleet was on those planets doing nothing. And the New Republic being stupid in Episode 3 isn't something that's just Dave's fault. Clearly, from what I just said, it's a reoccurring issue. This is all because of the sequels and Kathleen Kennedy, because all Star Wars projects need to make the New Republic stupid, therefore it makes sense why they didn't do anything about the First Order building a Death Star. But Dave made it worse in this episode. Hera says the shipyard from Episode 2 was run by Imperials and was working for Morgan Elsbeth. and one of those senators tells Hera that Imperials work everywhere throughout the New Republic. Maybe that wasn't so smart of a decision, Mon Mothma. But it's okay. They took an oath. Yay, the galaxy is saved. Corruption is disintegrated because all the Imperials that work for the New Republic, that have access to all the secrets, took an oath. Therefore, no bad can happen. So do you, the viewer who's watching this video, regardless of your opinion on the episode, understand how stupid this sounds. This isn't what George would have done. George wanted the New Republic to be stretched so thin trying to help the entire galaxy and its problems. Meaning that's why criminals were sneaking in and taking power. But in Disney Star Wars, the New Republic is insanely powerful but chooses to do absolutely nothing with its immense power. So that's the first half of the episode. The beginning, training sequence being good, but the whole politics thing being so bad and not logical. But the inconsistencies and head scratchers continue. The entire space fight, which is basically the rest of the episode, was so logically terrible. It reminded me of the Holdo maneuver. Again, this scene was shot perfectly and I do love space battles. This, however, was terrible. Fans always talk about plot armor, but this was the most plot armor I've ever seen in any Star Wars production in my entire life, and I've watched every Star Wars production. For 10 minutes, Ahsoka's ship was shot and absolutely nothing happened. And while the whole Ahsoka in space was interesting, I'm not going to call it good or bad, but it was new. And like many people have discussed in this episode, it felt very prequel-y in its idea and the way it depicted the Purrgil. I love the prequels. I just don't think this was it. I also think it was impossible to deflect blasters from Ahsoka's ship for so long. For 10 straight minutes, she was being constantly shot and absolutely no damage happened to the very end. Then, my biggest gripe for the show was when Morgan ordered her turrets to shoot upon Ahsoka's ship. So for about 2 minutes, Shin and maybe Starkiller were shooting Ahsoka's ship at the same time Morgan was literally shooting turrets at her ship. 75% of these shots hit Ahsoka's ship. When it comes to enemy ship, they blow up in one shot, but for Ahsoka's ship, it's invincible. The fact that Sabine says the deflectors are at 10% is crazy. There's no way the deflectors are working against turrets from the front and shots in the back. What I'm about to say is super nitpicky, but it's also true. In Star Wars, especially in Rebels, the characters will usually divert the majority of their power to a certain area of the ship. Let me give some examples. If the ship required an immense amount of speed, the captain would direct most of the power of the ship, or all of the power of the ship, to speed. Or, let's say another example, if a ship was being shot from behind, they would say direct most of the power to the rear deflectors. And if a ship was being shot in front, they would say direct most of the power to the front deflectors. The reason I just said all those is because it's impossible that the ship could have survived when it was being attacked from the front, the back, and they had to go as quick as possible so that Hu Yang could finish his scan. That's insane plot armor. And listen, this whole show from just the 3 episodes is a crazy amount of plot armor. Now I understand that there are literal doctors that have chimed in on this Sabine stab saying that it is survivable, but there is no legitimate reason that Ahsoka's ship could withstand all that damage. And when their ship deflectors are destroyed, and it seems like it's game over, the plot armor god makes all their power shut off because it got shot, meaning that Morgan can't shoot the ship. Let's be real, and again, this is something that happens a lot in Star Wars. I wonder if people can even see the ships in front of them. Like Morgan, you can still see Ahsoka's ship. I don't care if you can't track it. Start shooting until you line it up with the ship. Nobody in Star Wars seems to care to look at what's right in front of them. Like in Rebels, when they had to get past a fleet, they would just fly right in front of the fleet, but Hera would be like, turn the power off. The captain of the Imperial ship who's standing at the viewport should clearly see a ship just floating out there. It's crazy and unbelievable that this keeps happening. At least Shin and hopefully Starkiller could see the ship, but again, Morgan not being able to shoot a defenseless ship in front of her that she can see with her own eyes is so stupid. I find it funny when Ahsoka is doing space flips on top of the extremely damaged ship. Sabine is like looking under the desk trying to fix the ship. I believe, in my personal opinion, from seeing how they got shot, that their ship should be completely paralyzed and totally immobile. But Sabine just starts messing with wires and somehow the ship comes back to life. The most ironic part of the scene was when Ahsoka was floating in space and she's like, Sabine, I need you to pick me up. She can fly, right? I mean, Leia could Superman fly, so why can't Ahsoka? Now they're fighting in the clouds above this really cool looking forest, and Ahsoka gets the ship out of the view of definitely Starkiller and Shin's view. They somehow find a patch in the forest that fits the ship and they set it down. And guess what? The enemies can't detect their ship, so they can't find them. So Shin flies over and over and over, and they don't see Ahsoka's ship. Now I'm not going to rant about how stupid that is, because again, just look down and you will see the ship. Shin goes, oh, damn. They're hiding somewhere, let's turn back. Then they leave and Ahsoka turns the power back on. See, me. If I was Shin or Starkiller, I would have just hovered above the forest. Eventually Ahsoka's gonna turn the power back on and then you could track her. Or even more brilliantly, Shin should have also landed in the forest and turned her power off. Then, when Ahsoka starts flying again, Shin should have the power be put back on and then chase her. But while invincible ships in stupid New Republic are huge concerns, a ship not being detected because the power was off is very stupid, but it's also pretty nitpicky for me, and I will acknowledge that. With that being said, I want to talk about Ahsoka, specifically the acting for the character done by Rosario Dawson. In my opinion, this is not a nitpick of some unimportant thing. This is a serious problem that the show is facing, and I'm scared that this new personality of Ahsoka will mess this show up going forwards. Now, Rosario Dawson is certainly talented, but I don't understand why she acts so stiff and cold in the show. Ahsoka feels so cold and unfriendly. She was upset at Sabine in the second episode, which is so unlike Ahsoka. Ahsoka's always been caring and always expresses this. Especially since Ahsoka isn't a Jedi, I don't understand why she has to be so emotionless. And while this isn't really a problem right now with the first two episodes, I'm concerned that this will mess up the rumored scene between Anakin and Ahsoka on Mustafar. Ahsoka's supposed to go into the world between worlds and confront Anakin instead of Obi-Wan. I feel like Rosario won't portray Ahsoka correctly. This doesn't just apply for that scene. I think any scenes that require Rosario to be emotional and not cold and stoic will feel weird. So why is this the case? Rosario is certainly a super talented actor. I think maybe it has a little to do with Dave Filoni, as he's more of an animation guy, and he's a little inexperienced on how to direct live action, so maybe he's not directing the acting correctly. But that doesn't even make sense, because he's only directing 2 episodes. Maybe his writing of Ahsoka is hard for Rosario to act. Maybe it's none of these, but there's certainly something going on. See, I think if you had to take one message away from this video, this is what I would say. Dave Filoni is great, and if anyone can actually save Star Wars, it would be him. However, Disney has messed up so bad with the sequel trilogy, which means all roads lead to it. The New Republic that we see in the Ahsoka show will be destroyed. Nothing good that the New Republic will ever do will ever matter, because it all ends with them being destroyed. No matter how hard Ahsoka tries to save the galaxy by defeating Thrawn, she is not in the sequels, nor is the whole Ghost Squadron. These events mean nothing, no matter how cool they are. It's like, no matter how strong the Jedi were, we knew they would fail. But at least the original trilogy was amazing, so we didn't mind what happened in the prequels because it led to the OT. So Dave can, and I'm sure he will end the season or movie with Ahsoka and the Ghost Squadron in the other galaxy. This will prevent them from having to die in our galaxy, because if they weren't killed, then they would have been in the sequel trilogy. So while everyone turns to this idea and says that Ahsoka and the Ghost Squadron will be in the New Beyond, so it's fine that they're not in the sequels, is a little incorrect. Because this does mean the whole plot of the show results in a failure. And if you think about it, the whole plot of the show is to keep the galaxy in peace. But we know that eventually Ahsoka won't be here when she's needed most. But let's make it clear. A story where, the ending is a failure can still be extremely interesting. The prequels were great at this because we knew what was going to happen. The prequels made the Jedi look like the narcissists that they were and showed the true strength of Palpatine while making an interesting story. But this is different. Dave isn't making the show to explain how dumb Ahsoka was for not being in the galaxy when the First Order rised, and he's not making this because he wants to show how powerful the villain is, because they eventually won. We know that's not true because Thrawn also isn't in the sequels. So is Dave trying to make Kylo Hux and Snoke look smart? I doubt it. So the result of the show will be confusing when the whole plot is to bring back Ezra, defeat Thrawn, peace to the galaxy, when we all know nothing in this story will actually bring peace to the galaxy. So hopefully you can understand the messy situation Dave is being put in. So for all the characters' hopes to save the galaxy in any project between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, it all leads to nothing because these characters aren't even in it. Real question for the people who are still watching this video. Where do you think Mando is during the sequel trilogy? He's definitely not in the new Beyond, so where is he? Let me know in the comments below. If anyone has actually spent the time to try to figure out a way to navigate around the sequels, it's Dave Filoni, and I certainly hope he will do it. I still have trust in Dave, but this episode certainly showed me some big problems that we're currently facing at Lucasfilm right now. I will continue to make videos covering the Ahsoka show in between each episode, so make sure to look out for my videos. Thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.